Hi, I'm John Self, and welcome to our live stream Lunch and Learn for October 13th, 2002. We live stream every Thursday at 11:30 a.m. Central Time with information and insight to ignite your career, improving your trajectory and income. Today, we're going to cover two topics: the importance of brand differentiation, and second, using stories in an interview to enhance your performance and improve your outcomes. We will also answer some of your questions. This session will be available for video replay later today at johngself.com. Click the red button on the right margin of our homepage. This episode will be listed in our catalog of courses as a free session. If you would like more information regarding our affordable online on-demand courses or a live one-on-one customized career coaching engagement using Zoom, email me at john@johngself.com. So, let's get to it. Brand differentiation has always been an important element of consumer marketing. An associate reported earlier this week that an online posting for a senior level executive communications position attracted 200 applicants within the first 9 minutes of it being available. That is not only amazing, it is not uncommon. The best jobs are becoming more hyper-competitive, but the accelerating competition is not limited to the top jobs. Research shows that if you rely solely on online applications to secure your next job, the odds are about 150 to 1. 150 to 1 against you. Even with the help of a recruiter, the odds are about 32 to 1, and with an introduction from a trusted resource, your odds improve to about 16 to 1. Now, in a horse race or some other sporting event, 16 to 1 odds are not that great. The job search landscape is made more challenging with the introduction of automated applicant sourcing and initial screening technologies. Some programs in early stage rollout or development can source applicants for a job by searching thousands of social media profiles in a matter of minutes. This means that if your personal career brand is not defined within your strategy network, and especially on social media platforms like LinkedIn and Instagram, for example, your chances of being discovered for that challenging, well-paying gig diminish. Automation and what is referred to as artificial intelligence is a game-changing combination for career management. The rules for managing your career, your brand, are being rewritten. Today, supervisors, managers, and executives must be purposeful with their personal brand differentiation strategy. The days when your reputational performance can speak for itself are over. You must produce and maintain a robust social media presence with information that supports your brand strategy and a record of accomplishment. With a highly competitive landscape for the top jobs, you must take your interviewing skills to the next level. Now, there are several things that are happening in the area of interviewing. This of all, industry consolidation in healthcare, retail, communications. It's across the board in all sectors. This consolidation is limiting the opportunities for additional jobs. And as companies merge, that takes away employment opportunities. I remember in Dallas years ago, there was almost 25 or 30 independent organizations that a healthcare executive in the hospital health services field could apply to if they needed a job. Because of consolidation, that's now down to around 6 or 7. Now, as I said a few minutes ago, your performance is not enough. You have to, and this is what's driving part of the frustration in the automation piece of talent acquisition. Companies are trying to avoid hiring mistakes. It's extremely expensive to hire the wrong person. And so they're using this whole notion of automated intelligence, automation, to really try to recalibrate and be more effective. Now, when you are in a competitive search, you have to really differentiate yourself. Stories add impact and promote engagement. Stories are memorable. If you've done a turnaround and you sit there and you're asked about this and you just give them dot points about what you did and how you achieved it, that's impressive, especially if you have some before and after, some comparisons. but it will not be as memorable as if you create a narrative about what you found when you took over and how you went about making this turnaround and the challenges and the frustrations. Make it personal. Now, it can't be long. It has to be focused, and that takes preparation in advance. But you can anticipate questions, and stories can make your answers more memorable. Now, the other reason you want to consider stories in your interview is that they build trust and confidence. And I'll tell you this, there's a couple of things you need to really remember. First of all, the best qualified candidate doesn't get the job. That only happens about 30 to 35% of the time. The person who's getting the job is qualified, but they did a better job communicating their value. The other thing that makes a big determination in who gets hired is that employers hire trust. They hire likability. And that's extremely important for you to build. And the best way to do that is with the creation and the use of stories. Remember, you can be well educated, have a great reputation, but if you're not likable, if you're not trustworthy, if you're not memorable, you won't get the job. Okay? You want to communicate more effectively, and the difference is often defined by the stories that those candidates tell to illustrate their expertise and their success. So now let's talk about preparing for the interview. I think the first thing you need to do is to go back really in the go-to-market preparation stage and think about developing your value brand statement. If you haven't done that, you really do need to focus on this important process. Some people call it the value proposition. And I always struggle with that term. A really bright career coach by the name of Nancy Swain came up with the concept. I prefer value brand statement. Basically what this statement is why should we hire you? And you're going to get that question over and over again. You're going to get it, why should we hire you? Tell us about yourself. Tell me something about you I don't know from your resume. You get the point. Your value brand statement is really built around your signature strengths. So to prepare your VBS, you create an inventory of your strengths, anything that you think you're really good at. Put that on the left-hand side of the page, and then on the right-hand side of the page, for every strength that you listed, list the proof. What verifies that that's a strength? And initially, you may have 10 to 15 strengths, and you will have some really good verification, some good evidence in some and not others. And what you want to do is build this down, cut this down to about 4 or 5 signature strengths. We recommend 4. You cannot have more than 5 because then you just don't have focus. And this statement is about 250, 300 words. You'll never probably use it all at once. It's sort of like a politician's stump speech. You'll use bits and pieces of it for the tell me why we should hire you, those types of questions. You'll be able to use lines from this VBS and other answers that you give to other questions during the course of the interview. The key thing here is your VBS provides focus. It'll help you focus selling yourself. It'll help you focus your resume, which should be about selling yourself, and it'll also help you get ready for your interview. So your VBS is something you really need to do. We've talked about that in our interviewing courses, and these are not expensive courses. So if you need to brush up on your interviewing techniques or learn some of the other tricks of the trade, go in and look at our courses at johngself.com. And again, you just push the little button on the right-hand side, and that'll take you to our course catalog. I think the signature strengths are really important because you use these strengths to curate your stories that you're going to use in your interview. And because there are maybe 72 questions that can be asked in a job interview. I mean, you probably can come up with some others, but at some point you're going to start getting variations on the theme. So there's about 72 questions in a job interview. And you want to think about, you can narrow that down and based on the job. But you really want to zero in on your signature strengths and think about stories that you can tell from your early life, growing up, college days, significant accomplishments, times that you really overcame a big challenge. You get the point. It's the gamut. and come up with stories that illustrate those signature strengths. And again, you use stories in interviews because that makes you more memorable. People don't remember facts and figures, they remember stories. And so as you talk about your signature strengths, you don't want to have story after story after story. You want to use them strategically. They need to be focused. They cannot be long and run on. So this is why it takes preparation to be effective in a job interview. The next thing you're going to do is think about core and categorical. In every job, there are about 3 to 5 or 6 categories that, depending on the level of the job and scope of responsibility. And those categories are going to include human resources, financial management, sales, marketing, employee satisfaction, regulatory compliance. Anyway, whatever the job, whatever the categories that really sort of sum up that job, those are the categories you want to use, and you break down the job into those categories. In each category, you think about your top 3 accomplishments for human resources or financial management or employee engagement or retention, and list those 3 accomplishments. And if you have a really great, compelling story that can be told very quickly and briefly to illustrate that, then use it there. Okay? The second thing, you may have a setback in one of those categories, something you did that was just unbelievably stupid, but we all do that. That's just part of it. And you also want to have an answer for the questions you hope to God they don't ask. They probably won't, but here's the reason you do that. If you're prepared for those questions, your confidence level will be boosted immeasurably. And people tell us they didn't ask any of those questions, but because I knew I was ready, I felt so confident and so much more relaxed. The third thing you do is think about each category for each job that you've held, and think about, if I were interviewing for this job, what questions would I ask? And that's where you get a really good handle on the questions that you might be able to anticipate. Will you always be 80% right? No. But you're going to be, if you do this level of preparation, you're going to be a lot better off than a lot of the other people who are interviewing for the job who probably are not going to do any preparation. Let me tell you again, the best qualified person doesn't get the job all the time. Matter of fact, they only get it 30 to 35% of the time. The person who gets the job, as I've said before, is the person who does the best job communicating their value. And you do that by having great stories, great examples of your successes. Even when you have things like your weaknesses, they're going to ask about that. You have stories that you can use to make a negative a positive. For example, I was once asked, what is your biggest weakness? Well, I said, to be honest, one of my greatest strengths, my ability to communicate verbally, is also my greatest weakness. I said, my father once said when I was growing up that this kid could chat up a brick wall. And that really, it does irritate people, and I'm very aware of it. And I constantly check myself. And I think I've done a really good job improving over the years. So that's a negative, but I've made it into a positive, a lesson learned. In one interview, I was interviewing the candidate at the airport in St. Louis on an incredibly stormy night, and we had dinner and we were chatting, and we were doing the recording, and I asked him, I said, "Tell me about your weaknesses." He looked up at the camera and smiled and said, "Maybe we better ask my wife." When the board heard that portion of the video, everybody around the table laughed, knowingly, and they decided, did they really like that candidate? That was just a little line, but that counts as a story. So you want to be able to use stories, your value-based statement, your signature strengths, and your core and categorical breakdown will help you select stories that will be beneficial to making the case in a compelling manner. Now, there's one thing that most candidates do not do, unbelievably so, and that is make a closing statement to close the deal. Salesmen will tell you that the biggest mistake that most salespeople make is that they don't ask for the sale. Well, the biggest mistake most candidates made, aside from not being prepared, is that they don't ask for the job. Or if they do, they just say, I really would like this job. That's hardly a compelling answer. So what you want to think about doing is a summarization of some of the questions and why you think you're really qualified for this position. Use part of your value brand statement. Use maybe one or two examples about your success in the past. But you know how many times I've had candidates tell clients or even tell me in interviews that I could trust them to get the job done? You know, recruiters, we want to put people up for jobs that are very, very successful and make us look good. How many times has an applicant reassured me that they could do the job? In 27 years, 0. Never happened. How many times have I seen an applicant reassure an employer that they could trust them to get the job done, that their employees could trust them to be a good boss? 0. I've never seen it happen. I've seen candidates say, well, gosh, if I go out on the limb and commit too much, they may hold me accountable. No kidding. And that's what it's all about. So now let's move and look at some questions that have come in while we've been talking. So let's spend a few minutes now. We have about 7 or 8 more minutes left. Let's spend a few minutes now with some questions that we've been getting in this morning. First of all, why don't recruiters give feedback? Ever. Why? Well, first of all, recruiters are notoriously risk averse. Secondly, the only people more risk averse than search firms are internal recruiters, and the only people more risk averse than all of those people are the hiring authority. Nobody wants to tell you why they didn't hire you. You weren't good enough. You didn't interview well enough. You made some mistakes. You know, they don't want to go there because they don't want a conflict. They don't want you to say, well, that's not right, and I want to somehow make a point out of this. No. First of all, you should never do that. And second, even if you've been really discriminated against, you want to be very careful about how you prosecute that issue. But you're not going to get much feedback because there's no advantage for a recruiter to give it to you. Now, I was an outlier. I tried to help people. Now, there were times when the person did a bad job and they were a little bit combative, and I simply said, well, they went in a different direction, whatever the hell that means. Or they decided that there was another candidate that just seemed to fit with them better. That's an answer that people tend to accept. But the truth is, most applicants need feedback. Well, one of the things as a former recruiter I can now do without any concerns is I give people in our interviewing course and in our coaching courses, I provide them feedback in terms of how they answered questions, how they could improve those answers, their resume, everything across the board. So we provide feedback. Now, the issue of references, how many and when? That's a good question. The standard is 3 references. Let me tell you what happens with 3. There's always going to be somebody out of town, somebody's got sick, somebody's not available, somebody's whatever. Give them 4 or 5. Even though they ask for 3, give 4 or 5. Why? Because if they really like you and they're ready to hire you, they don't want to have to wait around trying to chase down some reference that is not available or is just not returning their phone calls. Okay? Now, the other thing you need to consider is that references who you may go through 5 or 6 searches to land the right job. References get fatigued when you get called all the time and over again. And sometimes they just quit returning the phone calls. So have enough references in your pool so that you can spread the wealth, so to speak. But let references know when they're going to expect a call and brief them on the job and even remind your references what you accomplished when you worked for them or when you worked with them, some of your accomplishments, so that they will be able to use some of that information in the responses. Now, when do you submit your references? Some people will submit references early on with their resume. That's a really bad idea. Unless the employer specifically asks for references up front, don't submit them with your resume. First of all, that's almost like submitting a cover letter. Some of these ATS systems, if they get something that it's not expecting, it's going to try to read it as a resume, and you may get kicked out because the scanner gets confused. So don't submit a cover letter. That's a freebie, unless they specifically request a cover letter. And number two, submit your references when they ask for them. That gives you an advantage. If you submit them up front, you never know where the search is. But when they ask for your references, now you have a status point of what's going on. They're interested in you. They're probably going to move forward with you. And so now you know they're asking for references. And now you have a chance to prepare your references. The question is, how should I prepare for an interview? And I get that all the time. Let me tell you something. One of the biggest complaints recruiters have is the unbelievably poor preparation of most of the people who apply for jobs. Hate to say it, but it's true. And when you interview 4 or 5 people in a day, sometimes the lack of preparation, it's like you're ready for a root canal without xylocaine, to be honest. So don't do that. If you don't have time to get prepared for a job interview, then don't pursue the job. But if you're going after the job, this is part of your brand. If you have a big search firm and you kind of leg it off and you don't really give your best effort, they're not going to call you back. So don't waste that opportunity. Be prepared. If you're going to go forward, be prepared. How should I prepare for an interview? Well, okay, you read their website and you look at their information. That's just cursory. That's baseline. That's not preparation, really. That's just orientation. The second thing you do is go through the job description again to be sure that you can ask informed questions about this position. Most of them are so generic that you ought to be able to come up with at least 10 or 15 questions about the job. But you always want to have questions. The next thing you want to do is you want to look to your strategic network. And if you don't have a network, you better get your ass busy and build one, because the job market is changing dramatically. And if you don't have a strategic network, you're going to find finding your next job harder and harder and harder. So you want to have a network that's aligned with your strategic plan for your career. Now, a lot of people say, well, I don't have a plan for my career. That's kind of a waste of time. My plan evolves. And okay, let's put it this way. You're a CEO of a company. And you tell your board chairman, I'm not going to do a plan because, it's just going to evolve and it's just a waste of time. No, you wouldn't do that. And if you did, you probably wouldn't be the CEO for very long. You are the CEO of you, and you need to have a plan. And your plan needs to talk about where you want to go with your career. What types of jobs do you want? It's going to change. Your interests are going to change. Your career goals may change. Everything may change. And so you update it. It changes in business, and you're no different. So have a plan that allows you to build a strategic network around your plan, geographically, by companies that you target, where you would like to work next, so that when something comes up, you have somebody who can help you get in the side door. Moreover, if a job comes up and you have a person in that community or who knows that organization, you can call them and get some additional insight into that organization. That additional intelligence can make the difference, all the difference in the world between, in terms of your preparation. Okay, we have chance, let's see. We're right on time now. We've got time for one more question. When should the salary be discussed? Big complaint of mine. Some recruiters and HR people think, don't tell them anything about the salary and maybe something will work out. That is so much bollocks. That is absolutely unprofessional. And listen, if you're a director or a vice president, or even a supervisor, but you're moving up, anytime you look at a job, there's always a chance, maybe not a big one, but there's always a chance that it can get out that you're looking for a job. Some employers really take a dim view of that. Some executives get offended that if you would even dare think about leaving them, and they can make your life uncomfortable. So why take a risk for a job that may pay 25% below what you're already making? And that has happened. Those scenarios have happened. They happen all the time. So if the recruiter that calls you doesn't know or doesn't want to tell you, just say, well, we need to address that before we get too far along, because I don't want to waste your time, and my schedule is extremely busy. I'm very successful here, and I don't want to waste your time, and I don't want to waste my time. And if they don't want to talk to you based on that, then you're talking to the wrong people. Let them go. But if they don't want to give it to you and they were still playing cat and mouse, which is a foolish, stupid thing that some recruiters do, then here's what you do. Say, look, here's my range right now. And I have a good bonus plan and I have these benefits and I'm not going to make a move for less than 15 or 25%. So if that's not in the realm of possibility, then please let's don't go forward, because I'm not going to accept an offer unless it matches those criteria. Because a lot of recruiters who are under, some of them who work for agencies, are under a lot of pressure to produce revenue, to close deals. And so they'll advance you hoping something will work out. It's transactional. They don't really care about you. They're just trying to get that number. They need to close. They need to get the revenue up so that they don't get in trouble with their boss. And so they're going to just throw a lot of stuff at the wall and hope something sticks. Well, when you get at more senior positions, you don't deal with those kinds of recruiters as much. But you have to be very careful, because that kind of silliness can really ruin your career. So you want to try to find out what the salary range is as soon as possible. Okay. That's pretty much uses up our time today. It's been 23 minutes. We try to shoot for 20. But as I said, my father always complained that I could chat up a brick wall. Hope to see you next Thursday. We'll announce our topic over the weekend or early Monday. It's 11:30 a.m. and we're always going to be on LinkedIn. And we're trying to decide which other channels will be the best for us. So until next Thursday at 11:30 a.m., see ya.